Hi, today I'd like to teach you how to read tablature for your 3-string cigar box guitar. I'm doing the G, G, D, G. I'm going to use the famous I'm a man lick or mannish boy lick, and I'll put the tab up for that. And it's open, which is 0, and then 5, and then 0, and then 3, and then 0. And they'll be written in the tab. The lines represent the strings, and the numbers represent the frets, or in this case, because we're fretless, fret marks. So that's fairly straightforward. Where the problem comes in is when you're looking at me and you're looking at the tab, and you'll notice there's a big G, a big D, and a little g at the top. But you look at my guitar and you see my big strings here and my little g is over here. This really confuses people at first. But there's a reason why it's like that. And I'll try to show you what that reason is. Just going to grab another guitar here. So when you're looking at your cigar box guitar, you're looking down at it like this. So as you look down at it, you kind of, oh, wait a minute. And then if you bring it up in front of your face like this, I know the strings are disappearing, but you can sort of imagine that as I'm looking at this guitar right now, the skinny string is on top. I'm going to put my finger on it. See? It's on top. Bring it around. It's on top. Then you got the middle string, and then you got the bass string. So tab isn't about me and what I'm doing. It's about you looking down at your instrument. So that's why it appears to be upside down at first. And all tab is like that, unless you found one that was written by somebody in particular that just has their own way of doing stuff. That happens every once in a while. But tab as we know it, with the number and the lines, has been around. They have written tabs from 1450 for the lute, and other instruments for that matter. So it's just as legitimate as our written music, if you will. Written music can be very difficult to read, especially for slide and for guitar, because you have more than one place to play a G note. For instance, you got G here, and you got it here. You got 3 spots. So if you're looking at a piece of music and it had a G note, well, which one do you play? So they have to add all these signs and symbols, whereas with tab, it's quite simple. 5 on the middle, 12 on the low. There's no confusion. So it's a totally legitimate way of doing things. Now you may have seen as well that there's very, very fancy tabs out there. They look a lot like written music. And yes, they are as complicated and difficult to read, except they do solve the problem of which G to play. I don't use them for this kind of teaching, very rarely. Actually, I do once in a while. Something that's really got a lot of subtle twists and turns, like the beginning of The Thrill Is Gone by B.B. King. There's so much subtlety in there that you almost need an advanced tab. But otherwise, I stick to these text tabs. And you can write them yourself. You can also copy everything that I've done, and I give them away for free. And you can as well make up your own. Or if you copy mine and you don't like what I did, you can change it, and then you've got a tab that the song goes the way you want it to go. Which all of that I think is very, very cool about text tabs. And you're not overburdened with a whole bunch of timing signs and everything, because I really think tabs should be combined with your ear. I think that's really, really important to sort of be trying to play a song by ear, and the tab is a guideline and of course your memory bank. Now just to be clear, I'm going to play on the top string or the high string, the same lick. And that'll show up on the tab, written in the appropriate manner. Now, the lines separating one group of notes from another group of notes. Generally, they're measure lines, so it's sort of divided up. 1, 2, 3, 4 measure line. 1, 2, 3, 4 measure line. Unless you're in a different timing, like a shuffle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measure line. Also, because we play a lot of blues or rock or other roots music, dividing things up by measures sometimes doesn't really work out very well visually, because it's not really played like that. It's played in phrases, like that would be a phrase. Now that could be, you know, a beat 3, 4, and 1, so there'd be a measure line in the middle. What I do, and others, is I'll put the measure lines, they're no longer measure lines, they become phrase lines. Because it's like having a conversation, especially when you're playing the lead to something, because you tend to go over the measure lines or start early, depends on how you want to look at it. So it's the actual phrase. You don't want to learn half a phrase and then learn the other half of the phrase and then try to put it together. You want to learn the whole phrase. Like if you try to learn like, and then try to put it together, sure, you could do it, and that's what traditional music does, but it's much easier to think of it as a sentence. Think of each lick as a sentence. So for lead and stuff like that, I tend to use them as phrase lines, not measure lines. So if you're ever counting and you run into a conflict like that, don't worry about it. That's just another common thing, especially with blues music, because blues music is a lot of call and answer stuff, where you play a lick and then you answer it with another lick. Like that. So you said one thing, then you said another. So the measure lines become irrelevant really, really quickly. Now I'm going to go through some signs and symbols. An upward slash is a slide up. So let's say there's an upward slash and a 7. You would slide to 7. Now you wouldn't start anywhere specific. You just do that. That's called a slide from infinity, because the first note isn't really specific. Just sliding into it. Now with that same symbol, if it said 5 and then the upward slash to 7, then you would start on 5. Like that. Same thing with the downward slide. I'm going to slide down to 7. That's a slide from infinity. Or if it said 9 to 7, that's not a slide from infinity. That would be that. That's one of the most common things you see with the fretless. Another common thing you see is D for a down strum. Or U for an up strum. This is usually written over top of the tab. So it might be down, 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 up, down. So that's how you follow that. The numbers below the tab are usually the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Or special timings, like to represent a shuffle sometimes, like 1, 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a... That would represent more of a sort of shuffle feel. Another thing that you see a lot in a tab is an X. If it's on a single string, it just means mute that string. You might have a riff, and then you want to get that note again, but there's a little feel to it. And you get the mute by lifting your slide up. Like that. Just a little phrasing things. If it's across all strings or 2 of them, then that's usually a strum mute, which is just like that. That comes in handy, like V usually means vibrato. Another symbol you might see is HAR or a capital H, which will mean a harmonic. It usually means a natural harmonic, which would be like up here on the 12th fret. If you don't know what these are yet, don't worry about it. And you might see something that says like a pinch harmonic, which means that it's a harmonic that's on a note that doesn't usually have a harmonic. For instance, 3 down here. So you'd think where 3 is up here. And pinch can be done like that, or with the side of your pick and your thumb if you're using distortion. I'm not going to do that right now because I have to change everything, but that's what it means. In parentheses, that means a couple things. That's one that can get a little confusing. Sometimes the note that you're sliding to or bending to, if you have frets, is put in parentheses, and that's the pitch you're supposed to get to. Sometimes a note that the carryover from a previous measure or previous tab is put in parentheses. You kind of have to figure that one as you go, but it's not used very often. Another one that we won't be using is a T, which means tapping. That's for fret tapping. For fretted people, we don't need that. And bending, we're not going to bend, but that would be a B. And an R is a return. So I'll sort of fake it. If I was going to bend this 5 to the 7 and then return it, that's what it sounds like. So you could obviously do that with your slide if you're trying to work out a solo and it has that mark in it or something. That's really helpful if you have a tab that's for a fretted guitar and it's got a bend, and it's usually a half step or whole step. Half step's 1 fret, whole step's 2. So you can just fake that with your slide. And return means you go back to that note. If there's no R, it means you stay there until your next note. You don't move it back down or anything. Hammer on, it's just what it says. It's represented by a little h. And you can do it anywhere. And a pull-off is a similar thing. Now on a fretted guitar, you can actually press down on the fret and then pull the string a little bit, snap it. You can sort of do that with your slide. And my fingers are resting on the string, muting it, right? So they pull away the slide a little bit. So you can do pull-offs. So that pretty well covers all the signs and symbols that you need to read tab for the Fretless Cigar Box guitar. And it doesn't matter whether it's 3-string tab or if you're playing a 4-string, or however many strings. That's how it lines up. And the same thing that I mentioned before is true no matter how many strings they are, is you don't think of the person you're watching play the guitar and that the tab represents what they're doing. You think of the tab representing what you want to see on your guitar. Once again, I'll just grab Wolfie here, and here we are. But you're playing, so you're looking down at him like that. And then all of a sudden everything changes, and when you move that up in front of your face, you realize the skinny string's on top. And that's true if you're playing 6-string guitar, 5-string guitar, 4-string guitar, 2. Of course, diddly bow, there's a safe bet. You don't have to worry about anything. I really hope you found this video helpful. Have a great day.